Hey guys, this is Loman02. I kind of want to introduce a format that I haven't really shown a lot of on my channel, and this is old school MTG or 93-94. So the way it's played is we're playing basically with alpha, beta, revised, unlimited as well, antiquities, legends, and I believe in this one there's fallen empires because that was the tail end of 94, I believe November or December for release, as well as the Dark, and if I didn't mention it, Arabian Nights. So those are all the sets that are legal in this format. There are other variations of it. So just to key you in, we're playing this as a vintage filtered event, myself and player Sung. So we only have one strip mine each, which technically back then was an unrestricted card, so you could play four of them. But we're each only playing one. I assume she's playing one. I can't recall if she used a strip mine on me or not during this. I assume she's running at least one, though. It's such a powerful card. So and ideally you try to have original art, but MTGO doesn't always allow you to do that. So I have 7th edition that is white bordered. I guess I could foil the card out, but at least has the old frame, if not the old artwork. Since opening hand's interesting, the reason I keep it is because I have a mana accelerant for one, and I can use demonic tutor to either get Black Lotus and or just a land, or possibly Sol Ring, something like that, so I can get Disrupting Scepter down and hopefully start attacking my opponent's hand. So I keep this one. It's a little sketchy, but it has a lot of power and it can come back from behind with balance, and it's not land heavy, so balance should be pretty good if we have to go that route. We end up going with the Sol Ring because the Sol Ring gives us the most permanent mana, and I doubt she's running Shatter's main. So I know I have the luxury of knowing what deck she's on. She knows what I'm on as well. I'm on a variant a deck called TheDeck because it was one of the original Magic decks, Magic Control decks that kind of introduced the idea of card advantage. It was, I believe, originally developed by Brian Weissman, and she's playing a blue-red burn, which I think this is actually a pretty decent matchup because if she gets a fast start, she can just run us over because she has a lot of cheaper cards that just do direct damage. Her creature base is fairly minimal, though, consisting, I believe, of 8 total permanent threats that include 4 Mishra's Factories and 4 Serendib Efreets. If you ever heard of the moniker, the Bolt Test, Serendib Efreet passes the Bolt Test. We're running 3 Lightning Bolts in the main deck, but they're likely to come out in board. So we draw a land this turn, which is good, and we're able to cast. We know we're going to get countered here. Like, this is almost assuredly going to get countered. But what I'm thinking is I have recall, so I can buy this thing back if I need to. There's the Serendib. So now we're at a point where we realistically need to get back a threat. We end up going for Diabolic Tutor because our hand size is very small, getting the Black Lotus and balancing, and leaving mana drain in hand with her on one card and one less, or correction, less resources than us. Her last card happens to be Time Twister. We draw into a Time Twister off of her Time Twister. James Day Tome gets counter, which I kind of expected. I go ahead and twist her again. Play out a Mox Emerald, or correction, Mox Pearl. Play out the Felwar Stone, just because I can't really counter anything this turn. She plays out Blood Moon. So what the idea is now that I kind of want to do is Blood Moon actually isn't doing that much to me right now. I still have blue mana. I basically have every color of mana that I require due to the Moxen. And I'm just a bunch of red mana. But I have Lightning Bolt and Fireball. She's at 16 life. So my thinking is here is I need to find a way to tap her out on end step, and I'm kind of hoping to draw into a disenchant effect, or possibly like an ancestral recall, or something like that, so that eventually we can utilize this fireball just to end the game because she's actually pretty low on life. And or if we disenchant and it resolves, then we can start attacking with this Mishra's Factory we have in hand. But she's just drawn one herself, which makes it a little less likely that that'll be good. Black Lotus is actually not the worst draw in the world because it makes this fireball even more lethal. We have a ton of mana. We don't have any permission though, and really our only answer to threats is this One Swords to Plowshares and this Bolt, of which the only thing that we can kill is her factories, which are now dead due to her own Blood Moon. She draws Library of Alexandria as well. And actually, there's the card exactly that we were looking for. So we draw the Disenchant. And she only has 3 blue mana, which means that outside of Force Spike or Power Sink, or I believe it's Spell Burst or Spell Blast, she can't have any counters to this unless she's running main deck Rebs or Bebs. When I say that, I'm sorry, Red Elemental Blast and Blue Elemental Blast. She's not going to have counters to the Fireball if she counters this. So this is bait. I'm trying to bait her into doing this. and she goes for it. So she counterspells this, down to 3 cards. I don't put her on main deck power sinks, so I think this is a pretty safe assumption. And if for some reason it gets countered, I have exactly enough mana to resolve the Jame Day Tome, which will allow us to pull ahead when both players are on low mana situations. So we go ahead and go for the Fireball here, which is plenty lethal with 4 mana remaining. And it works, and I believe we end up killing her with it. So the only thing she could have here is Beb or Power Sync, or like I said, Spell Blast. Which actually Spell Blast wouldn't work because you have to pay the exact same amount, and her mana situation is not as big as ours is. And Spell Blast is not really generally played in Old School. So going into game 2, this game's a little more interesting. That one was kind of a little quicker. These games tend to go very long. Just I guess to articulate like what these games tend to look like, they tend to go very long because the decks can be more controlling. Now they can go fast too. There's Reanimator builds. But this sort of fight, I expect it to go long because she's going to be fighting for card advantage because her cards inherently tend to do a little less than ours do. They're not as efficient. They're more efficient, but they're less economic. So like you're spending like a Psionic Blast just to like dome me for 4, but you're down a card, and effectively until I'm at 0 life has done nothing. Is how you tend to look at it. She goes Island Go. This hand has no lands, and it's a little risky. So, I mean, if she had like Accelerant, which I know she's going to run less of in her deck because she is a 2-color deck, then she could have possibly blown me out. But I think what her deck trades for in consistency, we gain in power. And I keep this because of the power of Time Twister, and I'm able to put a lot of permanents on the board. And if I ever draw into white mana, a timely balance could be very strong. So she plays out a manland, which means that Power Sync or Beb. All right, so she Ancestral Recalls here, and I'm like, great. This is actually perfect because she doesn't have the mana to counter any of my stuff. So I play out the Fellwar Stone that I draw for the turn and just draw 7 more, mitigating her draw as well. So the Time Twister was actually pretty powerful there. She goes ahead and attacks here. I can't do anything about it. I am feigning that I have Swords to Plowshares, which there are 4 of in my deck at this point, 3 in main and 1 that I boarded in. She goes ahead and reactivates. So I think it's a little risky because I have 8 cards that just kill this on the spot. 4 disenchant and 4 STPs. She knows I don't have STP, but it's not per se a safe assumption that I don't have any disenchants at that point. She knows I don't have plow though, unless I drew it that turn. So now we're kind of waiting for white mana so we can get this Sierra Angel online. She does not attack that turn, which is interesting to me because she was willing to do it the turn prior, which means in my head she likely has drawn Counter Magic at this point and wants to leave Counter Magic up. And we've drawn our own Mishra's Factory, so we're not in a rush anymore because Mishra's Factory on defense does a lot better than Mishra's Factory on offense. And if she goes to attack now, I know she's probably trying to bleed me of cards because she probably has a Lightning Bolt. And here, where she draws the Volcanic Island, she ends up going for the factory attack. I ascertain that I have enough counter magic to win this counter fight because I have all of these Bebs, Counterspell, and Mana Drain. See a Shatter, Beb again, and she ends up having to eat a Humble Pie and Maze of Ith her own card. We go ahead and block. Not that it really matters in this format. There's no tricks that are going to allow us to get punished for not blocking that. But I just do it out of habit. She does nothing this turn, just leaves up her mana. We draw Library, which is a spectacular draw. Now she has to force us to counter something or spend cards in our hand, so we can't get on 7 because we're only 6 cards right now. She goes ahead, I believe, and plays out. I want to say she casts Brain Geyser and leaves up Counterspell, which I'm actually 100% fine with. My guess is she's trying to either, 1, have us counter that, or 2, find a Strip Mine to get rid of the Library of Alexandria, which is an uncounterable way to deal with that. So go ahead and draw. Play out the Tundra and just pass it because I'm not in a hurry to cast this Sierra, and I'd rather stay on 7 cards. So if I spend a Counterspell here, I'm able to still draw the next turn with Library and then play the Sierra at that point. So we go ahead and counterspell. She counterspells back. We say, okay, we could continue to force this, but I'm not going to get off Library at this point because Library is so powerful. So we're going to opt not to play a land this turn and just cast out the Sierra and leave up our 2 counterspells. The Sierra does brick wall the Serendipity. Now, if she has another bolt, she could attack and then bolt it, or she could attempt to Psionic Blast it, or she could Fireball it, which is what she goes for here. We go ahead and counterspell the Fireball. She rebs. We go ahead and Mana Drain here because, 1, it's a lot of mana, which is nice, and we expect that we're probably going to Time Twister after we dump these Moxen onto the table. we don't have green mana at this point, so we are forced to use our City of Brass to cast the Regrowth, getting Time Twister back. Play on our 2 Moxen, going down to 3 cards. Believe we Fireball away her permanent threat, and we go ahead and Time Twister. Back up to 7, draw with Library, play out the Lotus, and activate both to get in for 2 because we figure she's going to maze our Sierra Angel. As you can see, this format's very powerful, and it definitely gives you perspective on the power level of creatures versus spells at this point in time. As her deck only runs 8 total permanent threats, 4 of which are lands, and then, the pretty ubiquitous with the format Serendib Efreet. We go ahead and draw, get rid of the Maze of Ith, attack. She blocks, which means in my mind she probably has a Lightning Bolt, but we have 2 counters in hand. So we go ahead and counter the Lightning Bolt with the Beb. She goes ahead and rebs back, and I believe we go ahead and counterspell here, and I believe the Sierra Angel stays around. I'm not really that afraid to go down to 6 cards here. Obviously, I can't stop this. Never mind. No, the Sierra Angel dies here, but we bleed her hand down to 3 cards. She has an additional Serendib, which is fine. She time walks. She draws very lucky here and ends up hitting her Ancestral because she's at 0 cards. So her draw for the turn was Ancestral, which is good. So she's back up on cards. It looks like she only has 2 that she's going to keep, though. We find the Cop R, which is actually great. And I'm willing to sit back on this right now because I've dealt with her permanent threat. She fires up a factory. We have all these disenchants in a recall. What I really want to do is see if my recall can resolve, so I didn't cast it last turn. When this resolves, I know recall is in the clear to resolve. I fire up the factory, go ahead and attack in, expecting with 2 disenchants I'm going to be able to get her factory if she fires it up. And then I just kind of sit back and figure, hey, we'll play the library game until you present a legitimate threat. When she's tapping out here, I think she may have drawn Fireball, which is horrible for us because she could actually win here. Earthquake would do the same if she has Fireball. But it's actually just Brain Geyser, and I'm okay with that because that means that now when I go to recall, I can get back my Time Twister as well. And it's actually going to be pretty beneficial, especially with all these Moxen. So we go ahead and cast out all of our stuff because there's no point in librarying before a Time Twister turn. We go ahead and disenchant first, using the maximum amount of our cards and getting rid of as many of our permanents as we can to gain card advantage. It gets countered, but we have the recall as well, which we're kind of planning on. So we go ahead and recall. I believe we get the Black Lotus and the Time Twister, discarding the remainder of our hand, which is now useless because we've already played our land permanent this turn. Get the Black Lotus to make the 3 mana required, Ancestral Recall, up to a bunch of cards. We have to discard, unfortunately. I was really looking for more counter magic, which I found, and was able to get rid of some lands that I really didn't need here. Attacks with both. We go ahead and disenchant the factory and take the 3 down to 9. I could have note drawn with library, but at this point, I didn't think I wanted to. I think I'd rather leave up the Circle of Protection red, so we just don't die to like a random burn spell. We go ahead and cast out the balance. She lightning bolts at us, trying to drop her hand size down. We go ahead and use the Cop R to protect ourselves from it. And then discard because she used that, and she used it intentionally so she could get another card out of her hand. I don't need both factories, so I just keep one of the factories and ditch the other. Getting rid of both of her Serendibs are a couple of the threats that we're going to have the hardest time dealing with outside of Swords to Plowshares, because we don't have Wrath of God in the deck right now. I didn't think Wrath of God was good against essentially a 4-creature deck. We go ahead and get in with Factory, and if she wants to burn it off, that's cool, she can. Put her down to 10, so our life totals are fairly close. Now, note we have Cop R up, so outside of the two additional Serendibs, there's not a ton that I'm afraid of, and even Serendib's not that bad. Really, it's Serendib and Emissions Factory we need to worry about, and Psionic Blast to a lesser extent because that can burn us. It's a blue spell. All right, she goes ahead and casts Recall. I go ahead and counter this. I don't really want her to get back her Serendib. She'll get back a pair of them. We trade a Beb and a Reb, and we counter that. She's down to 3 cards at this point. Now, we're obviously at 1, but our 1 card is Brain Geyser, and because she didn't counter there, I'm pretty sure Brain Geyser can resolve at this point. We draw an STP, which is not a bad card for the turn. I believe we just go ahead and put ourselves back up to 7 cards. We don't go beyond 7. I don't think there's a need for that because we have the Library of Alexandria, and decking with this deck, well, correction. Like, you really can't deck with this deck unless your opponent has like a Tormod script or something, or you incorrectly use Regrowth. So Regrowth and Time Twister essentially allow this deck to avoid being milled due to the fact that you can consistently return the Time Twister and eventually have all of the permanents on board and just recurse all of your spells so that your draw is always spells. The game ends here because, as I said, we knew she wasn't on counter magic once she didn't fight over the recall on her turn to get back the 2 Serendibs. So we're assuming she's on 3 blanks or like some lightning bolts or something like that. We end up mind twisting her here. This was going to resolve. So unless she had like a psionic blast, she could have gotten 4 damage in, but she was going to lose her hand. We're still on counter magic at this point. And likely to go back up to library range next turn with the demonic tutor, which could have gone for regrowth. Could have gone for actually recall. Recall probably would have been the nicest off of Demonic Tutor, getting back the Time Twister, the Ancestral, and probably a counterspell. And we would have locked the game up, I think, at that point, especially with James Day Tome and a Disrupting Scepter, which Disrupting Scepter essentially says, like, all right, any card you draw that you can't cast on your turn, you're going to lose it. So any permission she draws, any counterspells, mana drains, rebs, bebs, they're going to get countered. And James Day Tome is going to continue to put us up a card. And Cop Red is going to continue to make her red cards, with the exception of like Blood Moon, complete blanks. And we're the ones with the threat. We essentially have 6 power on the board with the Mishra's Factories. And actually, I mean, Demonic Tutor probably at this point just goes for a fireball and wins the game. So all the other nonsense I was talking about trying to control the game probably could just be ended with a Demonic Tutor for Fireball, as opposed to Recall to continue, playing the control game. But yeah, so very cool format. It gives you some historical perspective. There are many ways of playing it. Like I said, we're playing with only 1 strip mine, but some folks play with the ban list and rules of 93 and 94, which obviously allow for some different things that you can't do on Moto. For instance, Mirror Universe, if you're playing with the old rules, state-based effects weren't resolved till the end of the step, which means that you can go to a negative amount of life and still, throughout whatever step you're in, like main 1, be alive and conducting actions. So, if state-based actions aren't resolved until the end of the step, and in response or before ending the step, you change life totals with your opponent will take the life total that you're currently at, because by the old rules, the state-based effect of death wasn't checked until the end of the actual step that you were in. So you could be at -5 and still taking actions, and you could resolve what back then would be a fast effect or action of mono artifact, Mirror Universe, just to win the game. That was an original win con that was in this deck, and now is kind of defunct, so it's not in here anymore. Or it's not valid on Moto because you can't play by the old rules like you could if you were playing in paper. So there's a lot of ways of playing it. Mana burn is another thing that you can see in actual like real life events that are 93, 94 folks will play with, which makes sense because that was the rules of that time frame. I still remember getting my Shivan Dragon covered, rules book back in beta unlimited time frame. I think it was unlimited time frame was the Shivan Dragon. Maybe it was revised. It's hard to remember what the rules books originally looked like now. It's been a while, but very cool format. As you can see, very powerful. But just different because your creatures are just not even remotely as good. But a card like Serendib Efreet is like a rock star. Seer Angel is a rock star. I've seen some folks play Mamahodi Jin, which is a cool card. I don't personally care for it because of Red Elemental Blast. My 6-drop being killed by a 1-drop feels pretty bad. But very cool, and I hope you guys enjoyed this short video series on 93-94 Old School Magic, and give it a shot sometime if you have the card pool to support it. And I guess now more than ever, you can get original power, original frame, original artwork due to VMA being back online with original-looking power cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video series, and take care now, and if you care for a match of this sometime and you watch my videos, hit me up, and we'll play. Take care.